You're watching Viral People.
Mic test. All right, hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Viral People Show. Today I have Nicholas Cho, seasoned entrepreneur. I like to call him the true OG in the local streetwear scene. He founded one of Singapore's pioneering streetwear brands. His clothing empire started back in 2000 and grew into a brand synonymous with Singapore's street culture. Expanded into regional markets, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, Hong Kong, using a combination of physical retail and also e-commerce. Over the years, Nicholas has been a really strong advocate and mentor to entrepreneurs, aspiring business owners as well. After 2 decades in the fashion and e-commerce space, Nicholas has now transitioned into real estate, currently an associate group director at PropNex. Nicholas, to begin, for those that have yet to know you, can you maybe introduce or describe yourself?
Okay, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicholas. I used to run a couple of businesses, and I think business is always something that I've wanted to do since young, right? Because my dad is a businessman, so part of that acumen came from how he runs business and how I think can be done better lah, in this case. So I started businesses when I was fresh out of NS,
Nice.
right? And I think that driven by the fact that I liked fashion, so I managed to combine things that I like with business. I think I did pretty good, I hope. But because business has its ups and downs, in COVID lah, basically COVID 2019, right? We decided
2020
to pivot.
officially around that period.
Yeah. So we decided to pivot into manufacturing. But I mean, I haven't shared this with a lot of people, but that part, when it was pivoted to that part of that business, opposed to, as compared to running a retail business where I'm fronting the whole marketing operations
Yeah,
of
you were
the
the face,
business,
yeah.
right? The transition into manufacturing killed me a little bit inside.
But manufacturing still in the clothing space?
Yes, it's still in the clothing space. Killed me in a way. It took my soul because I thrived on like meeting people, trying to support them. I'm like I always say, I'm a very big fanboy of the local scene. I like to support. And that part, when we pivoted into manufacturing of fashion for other fashion brands.
So when you say manufacturing, this is directly B2B, completely B2B driven.
Yes. So we have our factories churning out like white labels for companies that want to have their own labels. So that threw me off guard because I cannot. And it really took a big part out of me because that isn't my... I liked fashion as a business. I couldn't really relate that. I actually dread going to work because I became for lack of a better word, right? I became a contractor.
Very transactional, would you say?
Yeah, very transactional. Hey, you want this? Okay, I change. Sorry, the material not so good. Sorry, I change for you. So I think the creative part was gone. The interaction with humans and people that I like to hang out with is gone. So when the opportunity came for me to move into real estate, I thought, let's try what can go wrong. And it's really a business where I can add value, right? Because I really like adding value to people. I like to solve problems. And I think real estate has a lot of problems.
A lot,
In
yes.
a way. And there's so many solutions. And I get to interact with people. And then I like to create content as well. So that at that point in time, it was something that, wow, was really good in terms of a match. And the only obstacle was passing the exam.
Which is hard also,
Which
really
is
hard.
the worst part of, I would say, it's like a passport.
How many agents do we have now in Singapore?
We have about 30,000 agents. And if without the examinations, I think we would have more. But I think, again, it's good to have exams that is so hard to pass. Because that only means one thing, because it's really highly regulated.
Oh, for sure,
and
yeah.
the people who are able to pass the exams are truly qualified. And that's just the first step.
Yeah.
Because after passing the examinations, it's the real journey really starts, because that's where you really go deep in, hands down, finding out exactly how you can help people.
Yeah,
Right.
At a much higher level.
At a
as
much
well.
higher level.
I want to talk more about what you're doing right now with real estate. But if I take you back in 2000, when you first started the brand, when streetwear culture, you tried to imbue that into Singapore's culture. What were some challenges you faced in the very early days?
Oh, I would say the early days challenge compared to the challenges now, actually not so challenging after all. Why? Because at the end of the day, you look at brands back then, when we started early 2000s, not many competition.
Yeah.
Because what you have are probably brands that we already grew up with. But there's no one Singapore brand that is, this is a brand that we can call our own and give us that, oh, if you are a DJ, we were supporting a lot of DJs, turntablists, skateboarders, because that was the era, ma. And compared to the current climate now, the era of people who are creating content, more influencers, YouTubers, a different kind, is same but different because they also represent Singapore in a way. So our objective, or rather our dream, is to let this talented pool of people who are representing Singapore, because we had a lot of DJ friends back then, and some of them can dress nice. Some of them crack their heads to, and support back then wasn't a lot. They had to buy, and really back then it was really pure passion. So sometimes fashion is really not about what they are focused on. And then in time to come, then maybe if they go represent Singapore on the world stage, right? We want to be the one to dress them, lah.
And when you talk about influencers and DJs, like you mentioned, the way I see it is you weren't really building a clothing line, right? You were building this whole brand mission of the streetwear line, right, that you created. For you, would you say, what were you trying to build in the early days? What kind of culture or vision do you have for the brand?
We know that building a brand is not easy. So be it a fashion brand, be it a clothing brand, be it a musician building their own brand, be it a YouTuber building their own brand, you're always faced with, you're not as good lah. You're just copying where it first started. Like even the first few skateboarders was like, how can you skate as good as the Americans? These are the people who started the game, or even now YouTube channels. But look at where we are now. And I think that was what I was thinking, how we can build that whole community where everybody,
right?
Yeah, everyone is helping everyone, like graffiti artists. So we have this whole community of talented creators fighting for the same goal, right? To make sure that we spread the word, we get ourselves out there, and then put us on a world map. At that age, early 20s, you're very ideal, man. Wow, I want to do this, I want to make good. And we just held on to that belief that it can be done. And I think over the last decade, all these have been achieved to a certain extent because with the progress and the speed of social media, internet, information, and whatever that you can get now at the fingertips, that actually made the world so much smaller.
But also more competitive, would you say?
Yes, correct. So I think, again, competition is everywhere, regardless of whether you want it or not. And I think competition sometimes is also good because that keeps you out of your complacent zone. Yeah.
So in the early days, were you guys more focused on retail then?
Yes, we do. Because again, if you see the life cycle of retail, I think the early 2000s was good times because internet shopping wasn't a big thing.
Wasn't really a big.
People are like, how to buy? So retail was good in terms of people actually still the experience of going to a shopping mall, just to go from one mall to another. So that was the activity back in the day. Every Saturday, Sunday, weekends, let's go town. So we start from Bugis or Far East, and then we start, and then we walk, and then we hang out. So I think that was pretty good because we also not only build a community of people who are creating, we also create a sense of belonging in a way, because then you have your cine kids, you have your whatever kids back then. So I guess that was quite fun.
And were you very often at the stores or?
Yeah, I really love it because, again, like I said, that was the kind of energy that I relished, I thrived. And hanging out with the younger people as I grow older, it gives me a lot of ideas and how to create a community. On that note, I think that was how we also came up with collaborations with different brands to reach out to the youth, because at that point we had an asset. The asset was the ability to relate to the kids at that point. So I think that really helped shape where I am now as a realtor, because I think you need to really think out of the box in order to reach out and relate, not only to a specific business. I think in general, you need to remain relevant wherever you are. The moment you feel that no need to improve and nothing to adapt, then you are gone.
Definitely. Moving into a bit more of an omni-channel strategy after retail, you guys started off, right? Yeah. When you look at e-commerce and other various marketplaces, what was the strategy when you guys tried to go online?
The strategy, honestly, back then, we were quite clueless because at the end of the day, we were traditional mom and pop brick-and-mortar stores. So the challenge was how to beat them because they were like influx of blog shops. Right? And people are like, wow, it's actually quite nice. So while the challenge is to see how we can fight with them in a way or at least be in the market, right? We were really clueless because at the end of the day, we needed the know-how, which we didn't have. So we had to hire people and say, what, can you create this and all that? Using the same strategy of how we work with influencers now is to now asking them back for help. Hey, last time we were doing this, or in fact, it was ongoing. So probably you could do a shout out. We could even do a collaboration. So leveraging on social media and then building that presence online, because now it has become easier. Because back then, without social media, you had to be at physical events to see the person doing that, right? And then, oh wow, he's doing, and then take photos, and then it's not a camera phone. So then now it has shifted to saying, hey, now let's do a funnel, or rather a straight through conversion in a way, right? So you see this person wearing this, posting, and then from there we can link, and then people start to get more awareness. I think that was the best strategy, which is pretty much still ongoing, except now that it's gone even more competitive because all the brands are fighting for attention.
Yeah, especially on social media. When you talk about a viral strategy, back then when you were trying to spread the movement of the brand, how did influencers play a part of that?
I think we had not just influencers, but also like artists.
Artists as well.
Because artists are also a big part, because that's exactly where we first started, how we supported Sugar Shay, just by pure virtue that he needs to improve on his dressing back then when he first started. So we thought, hey, let me help you. No, I guess it can be better. Okay. Because at the end of the day, when he first started, he was only 16, bro.
Oh.
So that is how
the early days.
We forged friendships, we forged relationships because of the brand. And it proves to be very powerful. Because up till now, we are still in contact. Up till now, and if you see my podcast series, Uncut, they're all from this community that we have built. Even with you. So I think that's something that you cannot deny.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned collaborating with local artists, musicians, influencers, how do you think brand collaborations are? How important do you think it is this year in 2025 for brands who are venturing into social media domain, going online? How important are brand collaborations?
I think traditionally a lot of old school companies, or probably traditional companies that have never tried social media, which I think is quite rare, right? Having said that, if you think that there's a one magic bullet that, wow, I'm going to do 1-2 times and then I'm going to get a lot, then you'll be very sad, very disappointed, right? Because I think it's just part of a strategy, overall strategy that you use as part of your marketing campaign to outreach. So basically, let's say if I put into a context of saying, if there are like 4 touch points, right? One touch point would be your physical store, for example. Second touch point would be your online shop. And then you have other touch points. So obviously you don't just rely on one touch point to outreach, because then it would just be one touch point. So if you expect a lot of ROI immediately, then probably you may have to deal with a lot of disappointment. But what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, if you can find out exactly, right, what your marketing strategy is and leveraging on that point to achieve a certain goal. So obviously, I think your business, your company is a good person or agency to work with, because you will come out with a strategy for them and say, this is for brand retention, this is for call to action, this is for a certain specific objective, or I want to have a certain number of subscribers. So I think working with companies like yourself is something that cannot be done on your own, even if you want to save costs, right? Because at the end of the day, people who are not familiar or trying out for the first time would be in a position whereby, don't know, can or not.
There's a level of experimentation.
And then I don't know how exactly. So it's the same for us. In real estate, a lot of people can do it themselves as well. But then again, you don't know what you don't know. And then you end up making mistake. But of course, if that mistake is something that you can deal with, then fine. But if it's a mistake that is too costly, then you have to deal with it in another way. So I think in 2025, back to your question, then you really have to be very clear, right? Instead of saying, hey, you help me do I don't know what this is. So when your objectives are clear, you communicate it with the vendor or someone that's helping you, or even the hired staff in your team.
Yeah.
then you are able to have that KPI or ROI really nicely mapped out and then see whether you hit the milestones or not. So for example, when we were doing for the brand, there wasn't any specific ROI because we were at the early stage, right? How do we actually calculate?
Just building brand.
So that was more of the retention, right? Because it has never changed, right? Our motto for the company was to be the support for local artists, for local talents.
Wow.
So anytime they need anything, you don't even need to shout out one. We will our brief is very simple. As long as we believe in you, you just come to our store, we'll hook you up.
Wow.
And I don't know, it's not reverse psychology, really, guys. It's not. It's really not. And they end up really posting about it.
Is that generosity that looks for that reciprocity with all these creators as well?
Very nice. I cannot pronounce what you just said, but I like it. Yeah, but the intent is not about that. Hey, you take, you must post.
Which is what a lot of brands are doing these days.
Which is not wrong, because at the end of the day, it's a cost.
It's a cost to the business, yeah.
It's a cost. I do agree to a certain extent. But then again, if your intent is to really get that person to post because you pass him something, pay.
Transactional, right?
We run businesses, we know how it works. We need to manage our costs and things. But then again, if you really look into that, then please, fair lah.
So it's really an investment into the strategy and also investment into creators, right?
Yes, because you must believe in that person, right? In fact, some of the people that we support were not that well known until they exploded.
Can you name some of them?
They might not agree lah, but if you see my Uncut podcast, I think some of them are there. So they were like, hey, just simmering. And then after that, blew up. So I think that, again, I'm not taking credit or anything. It's just because by pure fact that I am a fanboy. I really like watching this content. And the moment I see, hey, I think this guy can, it's damn funny, man. Hey, come on, let's support you. Only if you want, ma.
Wow.
If you say, no lah, your clothing sucks or your brand I don't like, then it's okay. I'm sorry, but I still like you because I give credit where credit is due.
Wow.
That intention has to be very clear. But if an intention comes with a hidden agenda or you're just trying to be somewhat ulterior motive or motivated by something else, then it wouldn't work. And I really believe a lot in positive energy. For that to happen, then I think no point.
Yeah, that's very important for business owners these days. Nicholas, you're an industry veteran, right? For a lot of SMEs trying to scale online, what are some key things that they need to get right on day one?
I think if you ask me, get investment first lah.
Get your money, okay.
Yeah, you need to get your funding, because at the end of the day, I've seen a lot of companies or people who on a whim and fancy and say, hey, let's start something without really getting their runway correct. Of course, having been through a few series of like ups and downs, you really can't put a finger to one specific thing that SMEs must do. It must be a combination of stuff. But ultimately, the most important thing that really keeps it running, other than your passion, is the ability to keep running. So I think that must be the most important thing.
Business is like war, internal mindset war.
It's a combination, really, a lot of things. You need to want it enough to do it. But then again, sometimes you also fall into that. Sometimes I feel it's like gambling. Like, why? Cannot. I still want to try. I still want to go for it. So I think if you ask me, then probably the other thing that on the hindsight, if let's say you really cannot, then cut losses. Because there's a lot of emotional involved, right? Because, wow, it's my first baby or it's my first store. I remember when we had to close one store. It was very painful because, wow, it's like our store. But then again, on statistics, and this is on statistics research data, not research data, on the hard data.
Numbers don't lie.
Hard numbers, right? It don't lie, ma. And that I learned a lot in real estate as well, because you can be like, wow, my house very nice, but the numbers are like, hey bro, this one cannot you siao can So now it becomes very logical to me. Same thing for when we had the first group of staff leaving us. We said, cried, hey, why you leave, sir? Of course, that was early stage, and then we got hardened, right? Yeah, okay, never mind, you go lah. Which is fine. In fact, thereafter, all the people that left and gone on to become better, we're so happy for them. So we see ourselves also as a stepping board for people to start. So we are entry-level streetwear, and then they elevate and then they progress to other brands. Fine, but you always be a brand that they grew up with. And then the people that came through our stores, they learn something, and then by then, they probably from here, they learn something. I hope you learn something. If you don't, then tell me.
Through all the decades running the brand and this entrepreneurial journey so far, what were some of the biggest mistakes you made, if you can share, and perhaps what did you learn from them?
I think biggest mistakes is always, I think it's very standard. I think it's very standard for many business owners is to want to scale too fast and too big.
So we're talking about cost.
Without really factoring, because I think it's always a dream, right? So we had this saying back then during the time where e-commerce was very good in terms of growth, very sexy. Even the investors are, hey, looks to be good. So we always say the online shops always want a retail store, and the retail store always want an online shop, right?
Yeah.
So after running and going through the course of having a few retail stores, right, we was thinking, why would you want to do that when you have a very good revenue coming from online shop, right? You don't have to pay ridiculous rents and you have to pay
much
your
more accessible
staff,
as well.
and it's really just fulfilling the orders from a warehouse or just getting orders done. I think that part you really need to manage. I can't really say because different businesses have different things. I'm just going to give you a general overview of what it's basically. If you want to expand, make sure that you have enough revenue or enough cash to burn before you see money coming in.
For businesses that are primarily focused online right now, right? They run a Shopify store, WooCommerce store, whatsoever, they're only selling online. Would you recommend for them to jump into brick-and-mortar spaces?
Just stick to it, man, bro. Just stick to it. I think if I could have that, I would just keep it at that. While it was good to have stores, because you remember, the era has changed.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not like back then where you really needed stores to really experience. In fact, most of the stores now are just experiential. Unless you're a luxury brand, you go in, you want to feel pampered, you want to feel like VIP.
Yeah.
Then you usually go to the stores like that, or you have nothing to do, you want to walk around and things like that. Look at the retail climate nowadays. It's mostly F&B, don't you think? And mostly service that cannot be done at home. You cannot cut hair at home. Maybe now even can, because you see some people doing HDB, barber shop, or baking at home.
Yeah, and even then with F&B and service-based businesses, it's also super hard.
And it's also super hard, exactly. So I think you see the climate is such whereby cost needs to be managed. And with the influx of not just high-end brands, Shein is one of the killers in the industry, because fashion has become very interesting, because while things are getting more expensive, their clothes are getting cheaper. It's become such that people can actually, I have friends who buy it like once or twice. Buy it once and then wear it once or twice. Because it's that disposable, which is causing a problem.
A lot of problems on also sustainability.
A lot of problems, but Asian countries don't really care.
Yeah, frankly put.
The Western country will be like, hey, you need to recycle.
Especially the Europe.
We are still not there yet. So you really see people just
not top of mind.
Just buy and...
So as a manufacturer yourself, when you move into that space and then you name drop Shein, right? What do you think of the business model?
I'm a bit off lah. I'm a bit disjointed right now in terms of commenting on brands. But I think it's probably a strategy whereby they are just trying to get market share. Don't think based on the models, fast fashion models like them, it's basically just to get market share and then probably find an exit strategy to sell the brand to another bigger group. That's what I think.
High-level gameplay.
Right? But that's looking at numbers. Yes, they could be doing a lot of numbers. For a fact that I know a lot of such online shops like them have also high return rates. So if you look at the production costs, you look at their back-end team, to build that level of a website with such sophistication, it's not cheap. And bearing in mind the return policy, the amount of goods freight, the amount of work that I don't believe that they are in the black.
Yeah, a lot of hidden numbers that can only be seen on the P&L.
Yeah, so I think that is probably their strategy. So again, coming back to where I was talking about, so you need to have the end goal in mind, what you want for the business. And then you work towards that. Of course, people also have that mindset by never mind, we take it one day as it comes.
Yeah.
But I always had this thing in mind that my godma, which is my aunt lah, she told me something that I'll never forget up till now. And I was quite young. She said, if you fail to plan, you're actually planning to fail. So I think the planning part is really important to be able to see, say, for example, if you start F&B business or any business, for example, what do you want to do in 5 years? If you can do it, okay, good, then cut. If you can't do it and it's reaching 5-year mark, then let's move on.
Yeah.
Of course, if it's giving you a substantial cash flow or revenue or even profit, then you can consider. But if it's starting to go on a decline, or of course, there is always this struggle as a business owner. Like, do I quit?
Yeah.
Am I a quitter?
And when to call it also.
And when to call it, exactly. So then they will come back to numbers. I think if you ask me if I had a chance to go back, probably I would have hired someone that is really a business consultant that has run businesses to help us go to the next level. And a lot of people don't have that course or don't have that. They are trying to run as a big company, but their internal operation is as a SME. So there's a misalignment, mismatch of how it is running.
The mindset as well.
The
is very
mindset,
different.
right? Because, I want to do this, but I don't have the means to do it because I don't want to spend the money, or I don't have the resources to hire someone to run it to that scale, right? Or to that level. So that is where then there will be a lot of dilemma, struggles, or what should I do now? Yeah.
So if I take it at a bit more of a casual approach now, you as a very cool streetwear fashionable guy yourself, what are some local brands that you can name drop that you think are up and coming or are pretty good out there already?
See, the thing is, with local market getting smaller and smaller, brands that are nice, they are all really passion projects because you can't see volume, for one. And if you go above a certain price point, then it becomes like, what? The mindset lah. I'd rather buy a branded luxury brand if I have to pay 300-400 for a t-shirt, for example. But having said that, I do have some brands that I personally like. One of them is Wonder. It's by a friend.
Okay.
I like because I know him personally. The brand ideology and the design direction, I'm vibing with it lah. So I think it's a good brand to explore.
Okay. Are they mainly selling online?
They used to, I'm not sure if they still do.
Okay.
I think Tanks, they're selling at a concessionaire shop in Tanks. So just a concept corner there. Online as well. And then I think there's a new brand that came up, was Coterie. You got the name right.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, it would have been something that I would have loved to do. But you have to make ends meet. You have to put rent. You have to put food on the table. So if I have to run that and I can't go with volume, it's a bit shag lah.
As a business lah.
As a business. So
Numbers
you see that struggle. Because our market is small. At the end of the day, if you talk about fashion, if you compare to US or China,
Yeah, much bigger.
even if you're a niche brand, you have enough volume because you are serving thousands, millions of people, right?
Yeah.
But in Singapore, the only million that you can get is 6 million. And not all 6 million are into streetwear.
Exactly, yeah.
Drill
The
down
market
to
size is
that.
even smaller, yeah.
So you only get that percentage. And if you really do get real fans of your brand, I don't know, probably a handful.
Would you agree that businesses in Singapore should focus on executing the business successfully here in Singapore first before trying to expand a bit more globally?
Well, it's a hit or miss. It's very tough. Because if you try to go overseas without knowing the market, the climate, the environment, how can you thrive? How can you succeed? But having said that, the other school of thought would be, if I make it in the US or Japan, then I come back here, I probably can make it, right?
Yeah.
That was exactly what we tried to do lah.
Okay.
But of course, you don't see it happening, right? Yeah. And that's the challenge. Because let's say, for example, when part of the journey was to explore China and even US as a market.
But why would you want to sell in China?
We see a good potential in China because at the end of the day, if you compare US and China, ultimately we are Chinese. As a country, Singapore is more respected country. We are a good brand. If you talk about countries as brands or companies, then Singapore is a very good company. But it's not known for being fashionable.
Okay.
So that's one thing off like the advantage list, right? You're good for governance, you're good for policies, you're good for safety, security. But you're not like, Singapore are very fashionable. It's never that part, right? It can be Hong Kong, it can be Japan, even US, even Korea. But Singapore is never linked with, very fashionable city. It's not. It's always very,
somewhere there, but not
it's very
high
safe,
up there.
very secure.
We like to play safe. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. So if you go to China, then probably you get better connection. I guess at the end of the day, what the genre of clothing that we are at is streetwear. Who invented streetwear? I guess it's the US. If you dig back, and that's how it started. So imagine us Singaporeans or some Southeast Asian country going to US and trying to sell back streetwear to them. I'm not putting myself down. I'm just being realistic, ma. Right? It can be a devil's advocate question. It can be being realistic.
Focus on the lower hanging fruits.
So how would that feel? And we are not based there on the get-go. It could be a different ballgame altogether. And there are brands that are based in the US owned by Asians. And I can name you a few.
Yeah.
But we don't have that geographical advantage of having, we are there. And then we build that brand and then it somehow flows back to Singapore. You can use a very good example in terms of Chinese music. You go to China first, you go to Taiwan, come back. Wow, you have your JJ Lins, you have your Stephanie Sun.
Yeah.
So if you try to go that route, probably, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen any fashion brands do that.
Okay.
And even if there were, but it's just a flash in a pan, sad to say. You go there, wow.
It's not common.
And then no more already.
Yeah.
Probably just a spark. And then everybody will talk about it. And then people jump on the bandwagon. Oh, I know him, I know. So I guess that's the sad reality. Not that it won't happen. I think it needs a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of luck to make that happen.
That's what success in business is.
I don't really believe in luck per se because I always believe that the more hardworking you are, the luckier you get.
I like that, yeah.
So if you really depend on luck as an element that plays a high percentage of your business, that'd be sad lah. Because it's not scientific, ma. You're just really waiting on things.
I hear you. I hear you. Outside of streetwear and clothing, you mentioned you've also ventured into other businesses in the past. What are some of these businesses?
So again, the things that I like to do really related to what I like. So I started body kit business, Abeng. You can take the Abeng out from me, but I don't know how you say that. But anyway, you know that saying, but you can't take the Abeng out. Yeah, I like driving, I like cars. So I was having, so again, the problem solving part in me was very strong in terms of saying, I was trying to find out how I can zeng my car. And then the local suppliers are like dodgy. Not dodgy, but probably I'm not used to paying upfront a huge amount of money.
And the industry is stereotypically towards that side.
And then without having clarity on when it's going to arrive, who's going to install it for me, and how it's going to look like. And then of course, as a business person, occupational hazard or not, you'll be like, I can do this better, man, bro. Like, I don't have to deal with this dodgy, no reply, don't know what's going on, probably defects, but no one to account for.
It was a problem you had yourself.
Yeah, and I foresee this same problem other car owners would have if they want to zeng their car.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then I said, let's solve this shit lah. I went in and then I started. It was purely on Carousel.
Oh.
It was pretty good, and then we started having an office for it.
Wow.
And then it
purely started from Carousel.
It's very Carousel, very ghetto.
Yeah.
It was during COVID actually.
I know a lot of service-based businesses that are only selling on Carousel.
So that was how it was.
Yeah.
But I also made the mistake of setting up a store lah. Again, because you thought that. But again, that was the part where, business people are like that one.
How do you run a zeng business, car zeng business without setting up a store?
So we work with, because we like cars ma, right? We like to play with cars and we have contacts with the workshops, the installation centers. So we just work with someone that's reliable. So I went to source, like in my profile of workshop painters, paint shops that I work with, which are good. And then we work with them. Then the installers that are good, that are familiar with this, we work with them. So we actually did like a partnership, like, hey, if I bring this down, how much? And it's really just pure service. There's no markup. So the guy was saying, hey, you should mark up one. I said, no, it's okay. I just bring them to you and do, because I want you to do a good job.
Wow.
It's not about marking up. You can mark up, I can mark up, but you do a fucked up job.
Yeah.
I cannot explain to my customer, because that problem that I was exactly trying to solve was that these people that are selling don't have anyone reliable for me to install.
You want to be that person, yeah.
And that's where I stand out. And why would people come to me? Because of that particular reason.
Wow.
So that was what I was trying to do, and it was doing quite well until the borders opened, and then Malaysia side get
got a bit busy.
They also go Malaysia to do lah. You cannot control customer flow and maybe cost wise.
You can't fight with their pricing.
I can't fight but I can fight with them on my level of service and my installation workmanship standards. So we did it for a while, and then after that, really real estate really took part of my time, most of my time out, because I think adding value on this part makes more sense. So I sold that to the workshop partner.
Nice, wow.
So he just ran with it lah.
Wow, this should be a Carousel success story.
No, I wouldn't say it's a success story. It was really a COVID
Business,
passion
okay.
project.
As an entrepreneur yourself, how do you view failure?
I think failure, as cliche as it is something for you to make sure that you don't go down that path again. So let's say if you fail today, then you must know why it failed. I think a lot of people know that already.
There are lessons also in failure.
Yeah, there are lessons. And sometimes I view failure as one step closer to success.
Nice, I like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's how you see things like positive energy. We always think positively. So some people feel already can't deal with it and then go into depression or things like that. But I think I heard a quote somewhere, my Monday motivation quote. I think as long as you are still alive, as long as you're still alive and you are willing to work on it, I think nothing cannot be solved. But of course, because if you are not here anymore, if you do something drastic, you can't solve the problem. At least you can still try to solve the problem when you are still healthy and around. So I think that really hit me. So no matter where you are at any point in time in the stage of life that may if you feel like, hey, cannot, just think that as long as you're alive, then can.
Yeah. Okay. I know we've taken all our viewers here across a long journey across your long decades of experience
Very
here.
long-winded, right?
No, not long-winded. I'm sure everybody's getting a lot of value. But if I transition to arguably the more important part right now, because this is where what you're doing, what you're focused on right now in real estate, maybe we can start off the last portion where you share a little bit more into what you do. If you can start off 2025 property market predictions.
Wow, this one suddenly you let go. I think 2025 is a very interesting year because 2023 things were like a little bit, people were a bit apprehensive because prices were like above 2,000 per square feet for new launches. So I think that was a big deal breaker for many buyers because they are like, it was below 2,000 just out of COVID, and then now suddenly you're looking at above 2,000
huge jump,
PSF. And the thing about Singaporeans is that they get used to things quite quickly. So 2024 was like, I need to buy 2,000, and then they'll start to have this. But of course, this is not just by virtue of saying, hey, it's 2,000, then accept it. If your advisor or agent or your information that you get is not comprehensive enough, then you feel I'm being taken for a ride because the prices are so high and there's an increase for no reason. But if you look at land bid prices, you look at the general sentiment, I shan't go too much into it because this is not about real estate after all. There is a reason, and I don't think we should look at, developers are greedy or people are just profiteering from this. But if there's always a way to identify the land bid price in correlation to what prices that they are launched at. So that's one thing.
Okay.
So once that has been established, then you will understand that it actually is not that unreasonable in terms of prices. Because every time there's a new launch, it's always, what people always say is the same thing throughout. It's always expensive. Back then when it was 1,007, it's also expensive. Then now you look back, hey, that was cheap.
Yeah.
So no argument on that, because at the end of the day, that's how it is at this point in time.
It's never cheap in present times.
It's never cheap in present times because the only cheap price was yesterday. And looking at how this is also about how developers are confident in putting in prices like that because they have confidence in the robust system of our country. We don't sound so political. I know elections are coming. So that's also another factor that to consider, because then we need to know what plans that we have to make the people happy. But I think the most important thing is, if the developers are confident that these certain prices are able to move, we should also go together with that confidence. And of course, demand and supply also plays an important part. So this year, you see a bumper crop of new launches coming in. I think that's in line with our population growth. Right? I'm not a statistician. I'm not a politician. Don't fight me on this. With a population growth, demand will definitely come up. And of course, there are also, today we just had a meeting with the team and the income also increased. So if you ask me, people who are ready this year to possibly upgrade, be it between HDBs to HDBs, condos to condos, condos to landed to landed, I think it will be a good year because this is something that the prices may not be as such moving ahead. I have an article, if I want later, I can share with you.
Okay.
The analyst from DBS, not me, analyst from DBS. They say that new launch house prices will hit 2,009 per square feet on average by 2030
For the whole of Singapore, on average 2.9.
on average, new launch prices.
I'm scared.
Yeah. But looking at that, this article was published in 2017.
Oh, yeah.
Then at that point in time, I think you'll be more scared than now. Why? Because back then in 2018,
Way lower.
2017, it's 2005 to 2007. And when this article came out, I think even veterans in the real estate will be like, huh? Siao. Agree? Agree? So, but looking at prices now, if I'm going to tell you that I can read the future,
Yeah.
that prices are going to be this
Yeah.
in 5 years' time, and we're not far,
Yeah.
because right now we're looking at average at 2005, 2006.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So it's about 400 away.
Fair enough.
What are we looking at in the next 5 years, actually?
I think a lot of yet to be homeowners, their first all of them are anxious, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely fear.
Yeah.
Right? What is the government doing?
Yes.
So what would you say to them?
The thing is, I have met a lot of clients, friends as well, right? They're very cute one. They know me personally. They don't ask me. They ask don't know who. Don't know the uncle or the whoever lah. No judgment lah. My question to them is, are they someone in the real estate industry? You need not be an agent that is giving you this advice or giving you this information. And how accurate are they?
Yeah.
So sometimes when I sit down with them and then they realize, they say, hey, actually, can they?
Yeah.
But the fear is because they get certain information. I agree. There's so much information around. Scroll your TikTok. You see some agent talking about certain things. You go to Instagram, you see another agent talking about. It's fine. But rather than trying to second guess or trying to find out information, because while information is good, while information is readily available, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where to extract the information that's related to you.
Yeah.
The moment you are not able to do that, then you jump into that. I think I cannot afford lah.
Yeah.
Forget it.
And then you give up, and
then
then
you
the
give
price you're priced in further
And
down.
then you are not able to catch up because back then you could have.
Do you think property prices will get any cheaper?
What do you think? Maybe I ask you.
No.
Yeah. Because that has been the question that many buyers are waiting for, to see if prices can go down. The very important thing that we look at now, the prices that we are at today are being suppressed by cooling measures.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think we shared this the last time we spoke. If prices were to stagnate or there was a crash, or there is not going to be a crash, this is what I have to share, because we have so many security checkpoints in place, the TDSR, the SSD.
Guardrails all
So
in
you
place.
don't have any people over leveraging, buying properties that they cannot afford. I think that was when back then where there was no such regulations and people are just over leveraging. Yes, then probably you need to have fire sale into. Right now, you don't see such things because people who can buy, can afford, have already been passed through levels of checks in order for them to say, hey, you can. Which is why it's so hard already. And with all the cooling measures in place, if let's say there were certain things to happen, even during COVID is actually quite jialat, quite bad. And what are the prices then? Do you see a crash? Do you see something dropping? Probably soften, correction, but you don't see it plunge.
No, not at all.
And people actually are still buying. So imagine if today there were some issues really affecting property prices. I think the very logical thing for the country to do, or the government to, the regulatory board, is to remove one of these cooling measures. And would buying demand come back in? I'm not sure. But I know that for a fact that with all these cooling measures in place, we are still seeing growth.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So what say if we take out the 60% foreigner ABSD? Do you think buying demand will come back? Of course, that will come open another can of worms lah. But you see what we are doing now. So I think that really comes back to asking back whoever that's waiting for prices to drop that question to see if it makes sense. Of course, if you think that it doesn't make sense, then nothing I say will make sense to you, because
Fair enough,
it's always the...
I think where you seek counsel also matters heavily. If you ask random uncles and aunties that you don't even know or they're not even in the space, then
Yes.
your mind
It's a
gets
warped, mah.
colluded. Yeah, exactly.
It's a warped sense of advice because it's based on their personal experience. It can be the same thing. They can be saying the same block, same unit, same price, whatever, but the internals are different. because whatever that happens to that purchase or what was done, how much CPF was used. So everything is not a one size fit all.
Nicholas, after you've spoken to so many people, homeowners, going to be homeowners soon as well, what is something that you see happen time and time again that really make you go face palm yourself? Like, what is something that people should stop doing or maybe start paying attention to?
I think while it's common knowledge in the industry, most homeowners, especially HDB homeowners, they didn't know that even if you have fully paid your house with CPF, that the accrued interest is still running. So part of our outreach of door knocking, even though people find it irritating, is to actually educate some of these homeowners, probably the elderly ones. And sometimes they get angry because they say, no, I already fully paid already, CPF pay everything. But the accrued interest is still running. So there's again two schools of thoughts, right? Accrued interest is killing, give me back a CPF, whatever. But actually the accrued interest CPF is actually good in terms of that when you sell your house, it goes back to your CPF account and you can use that amount to buy the next unit. But then there will come to a time where the selling price cannot match the amount of accrued interest back then. And the moment you sell, you don't have any money left for retirement. You don't have enough asset class or the quantum in terms of the asset class to downgrade. Because that's how most of the generation now, in terms of the elderly one, the ones that are staying, they say, oh, I have a 3-room, 4-room, and when kids go, and I'll just move to a smaller unit and cash out some money. So there are some cases like that where, it's all messed up. The selling price can only be probably 800,000, but they have to pay back the CPF at 400 each. So they must don't sell. Because the moment you sell, everything goes back to CPF. Unless you can buy something with that and put in. Or if you sell and you may not even have enough to put back, that could be potentially a problem for them to make the next move.
All these kind of calculations can only happen when you speak to someone who's in the right counsel space, where you've really been there, done that.
Yes, I think that is the important part that a lot of people are missing. And I don't blame them to a certain extent, because there are also black sheep in the industry that ended up selling something for clients without really explaining clearly to what their options are, just to have the sale done, and end up, hey, how come now I'm like stuck in a nowhere space? I also do understand, because I don't want to be the receiving end on such a situation.
Yeah.
So I really make sure that even when elderly families or couples, right, have this conversation with me, I would request for their children to be around as well, so that they also know, hey, that this guy talking to us, it's not some random guy, probably because I knock on the door, right? Random agent. But at least they know who they're talking to, and this person is legit, and how we plan for them. And then you discuss, and then we see what's the next move.
I think for you, Nicholas, you're not nobody. People already know you. So I think that's a good edge for you.
True. In the real estate space, I'm really still building my brand. Yeah.
So if I end off with this final question, would you ever consider returning to entrepreneurship, starting another brand or business? And if so, what kind of industry would interest you?
No, I think I knew that was coming, but I think I would still go back to fashion, but really as a passion project. Like just creating things that I really like. And knowing that running a business on fashion actually took a lot of fun out of it, because you have to compromise already, man. When you run a business, you have to compromise in terms of what people want. It may not be something that you like, but you have to do it because you need to make the sale. You need to respond to the market's requests. So I'll do a brand that is really probably very small run. Maybe I don't even sell them. It's just for like people that I like.
High quality art pieces.
Yeah. Then it's like, I like you. I pass it to you. You just wear. And then who is it? It's not for sale. And I think that cannot be done in a business environment. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, so a passion project. So full-time focus on the real estate side right now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Full-time helping. I was surprised because I didn't think that it would be this enjoyable for me. I really crack my head trying to work with people having issues. Having said that, all the issues kind of find me. I like it, but yeah, sometimes it's a bit tough. Okay. So some cases cannot solve. But at least we exhaust all the solutions before coming to a conclusion. We never give up and say, okay, let's try. Some cases where other agents have been saying that you cannot sell your house very hard to sell, no profit, and you can't move on to the next one. But the moment it took over, it can made them a good profit, calculated for them. Now they are in a bigger unit. Yes, HDB to HDB, but the problem is solved. And then we plan a sort of a backdoor for them in case they do want to sell in future. So I think that's something that I pride myself in doing.
I can see that. I can feel that also.
It's tiring.
Yeah.
It's more tiring. Sometimes I wish I would just, but I can't. Yeah. So no choice. This is my life.
It's not that bad. I'm sure you're doing good. Nicholas, for people that want to find you quickly, Instagram, mr.nicholas.cho. Where else can people find you?
It's okay lah. No need.
No?
Yeah. You want to find me, you'll find me. Man. No
Fair
need
enough.
to shout out. Yeah.
Fair enough. He also runs Uncut, so you guys can check it out on YouTube, on Instagram Reels as well.
Yours will be coming out soon because we have it planned.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, my episode's coming out here with Nicholas Cho as well. Nicholas, anything else you want to shout out?
No, I think thanks for having me on the show. Great chat because I always like open format chatting to really just share. Hopefully today you guys can have some nice takeaways lah. I don't know if it helps you, but I think this is a very good environment. I think you will have, I believe that Joe will have a lot of valuable guests that can share much more with you. So I think watch this space.
Too humble. You are the true OG in the space. Come on. Especially in the streetwear space. Okay, Nicholas, so thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm sure you guys have taken a lot of valuable insights, and we'll see you again for the next episode. See you guys.
See you, man.
Peace.